It's been an awful long time since the days when I called you mine. I know, I gotta let go. Think back to you every day still. Wonder if you do the same. I know, I know. Oh, I know it's been way too long. Oh, I still wait for your name on my phone. You're always gonna make my day better. I'll always remember us to be better. Oh, that we really were. I know. You look through me like glass in the hall. No, you don't see me at all. I know. I gotta let go. Oh, I know it's been way too long. Oh, I still wait for your name on my phone. You're always gonna make my day better.
All right, so thank you guys for joining us. This is Aru with Plunge Pop, PlungeCast, and another awesome interview ahead of us. Every Sunday and Saturday over there in the northern hemisphere, we do this live interview with comic book or pop culture guests, YouTubers, filmmakers, arts people all around the world. Give them an opportunity to share what their journey really and how they've got to where they've got to now. Especially today, we've got Jorge Valdes from Vanadium. How do you pronounce that, man?
It's Vanadium Comics.
Vanadium Comics. So
Yeah.
how about you do a quick bio, we'll get into it, and then after, give a bit about what you're about, and then we'll go into the deep meat and grind of things.
Sounds great. So I started off loving comics for a very, very long time. And as a child, I always loved the craft. At about 19 years old, I actually was blessed with the opportunity to work for Leaf Studios as a penciler. After a couple of years, I started working as a colorist, as they love my coloring via markers and watercoloring ability. And so we were creating characters before I had decided to go on my own due to creative differences and then form Vanadium Comics. Right now, we're currently writing the stories because I believe that, the writing is very, very important. And my goal is to create stories that are stronger than steel. That doesn't necessarily mean, adult content. However, stories that are actually captivating and engaging to the audience. So we definitely start there as the blueprint and work our way up with the other talent that comes in. So yeah, here I am, and right now pushing my first book, which is Mayor Luke, the Street Avenger.
Awesome. Hey, just over here, we found that like you're at on a panel at an event. Tell us a bit about that.
So this event actually was a couples event due to the Valentine's just passing,
Right,
and they were looking for uh, couples that have well, actually, my wife and I were newlyweds. We've been married together for 2 years,
right.
um, and they were looking for a young couple as well as a veteran couple. And the veteran couple they had was over 30 years together.
Wow.
And they had some single guests, and we were all just talking about relationships and
Mm.
intentionality with finding a partner, as well as um, working with a company called Unapologetically Blessed. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, I
so
remember attending one of those early on when I was married, and way back in about 2000, yeah, about 2000s, 2001. It was quite
okay,
interesting. Like, yeah, it was like I think a lot of people need that, like especially when you're going first into something like that. And I think the reason we see a lot of issues rise is that first year or two that people don't actually understand what's going on in a
right,
relationship. They think just because they've been together for 5, 6, 10 years as boyfriend or girlfriend or as was it as fiance, kind of like engaged. They think
truly,
it's perfect for that, that matching of people in that closed environment finally. However, a lot of them don't want to play the game, which is give and take,
truly,
and
yeah,
I found that like that's in my case that was the situation. You either give or give, and the other person takes, or they don't give back. And at the end of it, that's why I think it breaks down because you're not communicating. And one of the things I like about these, you know, these kind of events is that they tell you to communicate, right? Stop
that's
holding
definitely
it
the
in.
key. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
stop
the
holding
key.
it in. Like if you got issues going on, let the other person know, and let the other person know that you will just listen. And a lot of times, males have a tendency to want to fix things, right? And we know that this is how we deal with. A woman just want to listen to, and they don't want you to tell them what to fix because they know they got to fix it, but they don't really want to fix it. They just want to be heard. And I think a lot of times that's where the problem arises.
Yeah,
But one of the other problems in relationships is finances, man. Like the biggest thing is finance,
yes.
and everybody goes, yeah, I know, but nobody really admits that. Like it's always like the number one breaker of relationships, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah. Definitely the
especially now, right?
finances and just having that honesty, that going back to communication. You got to be upfront with your partner, letting them know, hey, like this is a situation.
Yeah,
Sometimes as men, we know we really stick to our guns with pride, and something happened bad at work. How do we face that issue? Now you should be facing it together rather than just not even speaking about it, thinking
yeah,
that you can fix it the next day because tomorrow may be a different day altogether. So
yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's one of the things. Yeah, it's one of the major issues we've had for the last, say, like this whole generation, right? Because of
right,
like a fathers in the home, and so you got all these issues rising out of that, and a lot of the problems in society is from no fathers in the home. And
truly.
I mean, I've had that situation with my parents and family because we come from broken families, like two different
Okay.
broken families. So there's two kids on the outside of the family, then there's two kids, there's one kid here and one kid here. Now there's a mash of two kids and then me. And that's how, kind of thing. And so I understand it fully and understand what works and what doesn't work when it comes to that sort of situation. To my understanding of the world, right? I don't understand everything, but I know from my own experiences what works. And I
Right.
think that sort of leads into actually telling good stories, and you talk about
True.
storytelling and and starting to be here. That like one of the things lacking in entertainment is good stories, and I hear that from like professionals, and I hear that from retailers. Like we had an interview with a veteran of
Yeah.
retailing comic books for 30 years, and he said like they have the talent, but the stories are not good, and they're
Right.
not
Yeah.
keeping people coming back in. And so I see a lot of people now going, hey, listen, we just need to do good stories. But the other side of that is good art, right? You can tell a brilliant story. If your art is not good, it's not going to sell it. And so I think that balance needs to be there. but the story needs to be the enforcer of that. So tell me about, like, you know, how you said you got into it at 19 years old, and how did that start? How did you get into, you know,
Well,
open that up for yourself?
I want to piggyback on your first point before going back to me about having great, good to great art as well as being a good writer. You need to have that balance, but also with your art, you got to be able to tell the story. You have to be a good storyteller within your art form as well. So yeah, like when I first started, I didn't understand or grasp that concept. I took it in as you got to have great art. I was after. I love the dynamics of Rob Liefeld, the craziness of Todd McFarlane, the detail, the character development of Jim Lee, and then even going into like the classics like Kirby, going into Alex Toth, and another Mark Silvestri to name them, that whole 90s push. But then you really got to think about it. You got to go back, and there was a lot of artists that were unsung heroes that told great stories with their art. And you have somebody like Richard Corbin who could immediately pull you into that world of that dark horror that he was trying to convey, or Bernie Wrightson, Master of the Macabre, and yet his detailing was so awesome. Or even somebody like in the independent realm, Tim Vigil. Tim Vigil could draw you in with his crazy detailing, but yet there was storytelling there in his pencils, in his art. So for me, following that lead and going, okay, I want to, be like these great artists, but now I'm like, I need to tell the story. I need to visually capture it, so that way, if I didn't have the word balloons there, how can I tell this story? Another great artist / writer is Rick Beach. I don't know if you've read Brat Pack, but if you took out the balloons, you could still see the story unfold right in front of you. So yeah, just having that and then taking that into consideration onto the page. Right. I mean, Tim Vigil. That's probably one of the safer covers you could show. But yes, it's really graphic, but he could definitely convey a story.
I think, and that's kind of like you're talking about, like the Avatar Press kind of writers, because I know that Faust, I think I read a couple of that, but I'm not. This is like the 90s, right? Because this is when they were doing a lot of black and white interiors and a lot of amazing, like very full-on covers as well. And like Avatar, I mean, the most recent Avatar Press I've read is like the 100 Crossed 100 series with Alan Moore. Now that was pretty crazy, and I think that's the only place you could do that, currently, because it's in the mainstream kind of sense, because Diamond Press and all that. But how did you, like, with decide that this was what was for you? Like, I mean, how long were you into comics itself before you decided this is what you want?
Well, I started reading, my first comic was a giant-sized Ghost Rider comic that my dad got me.
You mean the really big ones?
Yeah, that was it. I was so immersed in that. I wish they brought those back, because one, you got to see the artwork, and then two, you had that big lettering, and it was amazing. But then, of course, they gotten smaller, thinner, and floppier over time. But having that in my hands, that really had me push the envelope with me. I would go and trace the pictures that I would see. And then also animation, watching a lot of cartoons growing up. And I just wanted to be able to tell a story with pictures. My love for comics grew more so at about between 12 and 13 years old, when I actually started collecting. So that was around in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's why I bring up like Todd McFarlane. He was drawing Spider-Man at the time. He was just leaving, and then I got into Eric Larson, who later, created Savage Dragon. So yeah, just seeing all the dynamic pencil and the change, the breaking of the mold, if you would say.
Yeah.
Coming from the classics like the John Romita, John and Sal Buscema.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just changed. Like the 80s were, and then the 90s, and you're like, wait, what? It was just a crazy shift, but
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it was amazing. Yeah.
did you self like, because you're tracing and stuff? Did you get self-taught, or did you start taking classes and stuff to learn and further your skill set?
Well, I was self-taught. So my father, he is an artist, and I would just kind of mimic him. But he's more of a fine artist, whereas I liked cartooning. And after tracing, it was, I started just delving deep into the comic book. So I was reading a lot of like Sergio Aragonis, with Gru, and getting that cartoony style. Jeff Smith's Bone was another influence in the cartoon realm. My favorite would have to be Don Bluth. He did American Tail, Dirk from Dragon's Lair, Space Ace. So those type of cartoony styles. And then I started shifting into Akira. So then like Otomo, that was huge for me. And again, Arthur Adams, Bernie Wrightson, Richard Corbin, and Olivia, just watching them. Frank Frazetta was another one. And then I started learning and pulling their books and for ideas, taking drawing studies. After tracing, I was like, no, I got to try this on my own. I was given a George Bridgman anatomy book by my father. And then I just started practicing from that. Vern Hogarth with his dynamic figure drawing. So yeah, that just opened up my eyes to a whole new world.
So, like you wanted to do kind of animation style artwork and get inspired because you're inspired by that, as well as the more detailed works of like people like Wrightson. How did your dad see that? Because he's in the fine arts, and and you're doing that, but what was the mesh up there like with you two?
It was a lot of conflict because he really enjoyed the abstract arts, and again the finer arts. He was really into Pablo Picasso, but having him in my life, especially in my art life, it opened doors. So then I started getting into Leonardo da Vinci's art because of the fact like Wrightson is so detailed, so is Da Vinci, especially when it comes to anatomy. Another one was getting into Salvador Dali, just all that surreal work. I love that because then it started shaping my mind into being more fantasy driven. And then you had like the fine art painters like Boris Viajo, Julie Bell, and Frazetta. Even though they're taking on fantasy, their work is very fine, and they have expressionist styles. Another expressionist that I love is Van Gogh. So yeah.
I think the closest person that we have now that's like Frazetta is Alex Ross.
Oh yeah.
His paintings that basically bring these comic book characters to life. I've got him going now. Somehow I end up seeing one of us come across my Facebook, and next thing I know, I go follow it. Next, I get that every day now. I see all his beautiful work every day. And also, like with the same thing with the Frazetta, like it came across, somebody shared, and I was clicked on that. Now I get Frazetta across my page every day, and I'm like, I love it because I like. I come from background of painting as well, and fine arts and stuff like sculpture, bronze work, glass, all that. So I kind of like, but now I don't. The only thing I do out of there is ceramics because I just enjoy getting my hands dirty and. But recently, I picked up this book, and this is just one of the couple that I picked up, and this one, like I was looking at this and I was thinking, like, you know, when you look at the motion and stuff, you know, that comes from like actually fine art, and you're talking about how you took that on board, that just, you know, it made me think about how, you know, when you're moving, when you're doing comics, a lot of people really don't look at size of, you know, and proportions, because they're all about like how quickly we can make it look cool. It's more like making it look cool rather than making it look realistic, or making it, you know, a bit more make sense of it. You know, like they used to like hassle Rob Liefeld about small feet, but it's one of the, you know, a big chest on Captain America, but it's the biggest selling comic in all of history, you know, as a cover. And of course he's got it, you know, he's known for Deadpool, but it's sometimes even those in this, I'm not even going to consider it, but like the words right, but you know, those little wrong things actually make it, you know, make it so much more special, because hey, you know, there's someone like that can actually make mistakes, and so can anybody else, and still, you know, still keep going ahead and make big. I mean, you look at like, this is like 1990s, right? And you're talking about like about 30 years ago, and if he had just went, oh, I suck, everybody hates my work, and I'm gonna stop, you know, he wouldn't be as big as he is now, and you know, and where he is now, if he just decided, oh, that I can't do feet right or something like that, you know. And I wonder, did you ever have that happen, you know, like any difficulties like that, going, oh, I can't get this, or struggles that you had with work, with, you know, with your art?
Drapery was one of my biggest struggles, like clothing, and also even like before I started, like I said, getting into Bridgman and Bone Hurlgard, I was struggling with actually putting skin on the characters, because I was going in for so much detail that my characters look skinless, and then just realizing, like, look, nobody's flexing their muscles constantly. You got to have that relax. You got to have, you know, the veins aren't always bulging. You have to understand anatomy, because you got to learn from it. And not every shirt is completely wrinkled with line work. You know, there's some loose fitting clothing. You know, and I think that's why the rise of manga and a lot of the Japanese style is doing so well too, because as cartoony as it can be, there is a believability within the art style. And on top of that, you have great draftsmanship, because if you look at the vehicles, the backgrounds, the trees, these artists know how to draw that and yet place their cartoon or their character puppet into a well drafted scenery. One of my favorites is Dave Sims, because here you have the most cartoony character. You got Service the Aardvark, but those backgrounds are so lavish, the rendering, everything. I know he had another artist working with him, but still, just to have that level of depth and fine art with the ink, and then have a cartoony character, you would think it doesn't fit, but then you read it and you're like, this is a masterpiece, and it was an independent work.
I think you're right. You hit a good point there about the background work, because I know, like in some, like you know, some manga, they do use 3D assets because of speed, like but like there's some amazing stuff like Vinland, if I remember right, and like Berserk, that are like so detailed. I mean, Akira, right, before they had 3D computers and all that. There's so much amazing work, and even like I'm looking at Ghost in the Shell in front of me, right? And
Masumashiro,
you know, the work, you know, the art style, you know, and the characters and stuff, and the amazing, you know, character designs, the robots and stuff. This is all by hand, but the background, a lot of comics now don't have backgrounds in their panels, even in their pages. Like, it's kind of sad, because I think like I was talking about that gentleman before, about like how Stu was talking about, as a retail, a lot of people are just not putting background in the panels, and it's like, well, people don't just suddenly appear in air, right? There's got to be some sort of bricks, some buildings, some trees, some cars, something there
Yeah.
to just show it's there. And I think that's kind of like, it could be down to the fact that people are rushing and trying to get work out really quick, or because they're working on 4 or 5 different books to make their income come in. And but that then also suffers on the other end, where people aren't buying those books because the art is tardy, right? It's not well done. So, you know, that's what I think is quite interesting, because we haven't had someone who has had a parent who's actually in fine arts, right? And it's kind of like, you know, because I'm sure you had moments where like you, hey, your dad's going, what about this? What about that? And you're going, well, what do you think? You know, so what made you think that like to concentrate more details than to just go, you know, speed through it all, kind of, but not like, you know, because at the end of the day, you want to like put a piece of work out there, especially if you've got a parent who's like putting that much effort into his work. Did you feel like a need to do the same for yourself as well?
Yes, and I'll tell you, one of the major reasons is you're putting your name on your work.
Right.
So slapping your name on your work and then not even taking pride into doing something, like, to me, I don't look at comics as just comics.
Right.
It is a written and visual medium, that's for sure, and that's the fact. However, I look at it more from a cinematic point of view as well. And what I see comics are nothing more than, you know, stories with storyboards, and our imaginations are, and our imagination, what we take in visually is putting those pieces together to make and convey a movie or show. Because immediately after we read a comic, or we you know, or even watching a really tight animation, you start casting somebody that can play the role. Now, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You know, if you didn't believe that, why would you do it? So my whole thing is, like we were talking, you know, I use the word puppet, but it's really your character that you're putting them in that scene. And your whole thing is to create so much conflict to keep the audience engaged throughout, to see if your hero will make it through or beat the antagonist, or just take it to the next level up until we get to the ending, if there's an ending, unless it's an ongoing series. But it could be the ending or the denouement of the moment until the next chapter. So taking all that in, we have the beautiful vehicle of the visual medium. But if you don't have a background and you're just splashing color with two people having a dialogue, yeah, it tends to get boring. Now, I understand deadlines, whatnot. I get it, but however, in my situation, because I'm an independent, I am graced with the time up until I say this is an ongoing monthly series. Well, now I put a timetable and a deadline within my work. But my plan to just, you know, focus on some graphic novels that will be ongoing, but at the same time, you know, through crowdfunding, allocate that time so that you get a quality product in your hands, rather than a mishmash of, well, the story was okay but the art sucked, or the art was amazing but the story is garbage. We can't have that. Like, you know, you got to respect the customer, you got to respect your audience, and more so, you got to respect your craft, because you're putting your name on it. So
yeah, I think when you talk about like scenery and stuff like that, I was thinking like, it's like, for me, I put out that creating comics is my religion, and I've really believed that, because it's, you know, I'm surrounded by it. I live, you know, everybody in my, you know, I had a shop, 35 years of being in it as a collector, and everybody that knows me knows that's what I'm into. Doesn't matter how long, it'll be like within like about 5-10 minutes of talking to me, you'll know exactly who I am and where I stand on things. One thing you know, because it's my medium, it's what I've chosen. I come out of filmmaking and studying, and then I had my accident, so I couldn't do that anymore. I just went, this is how I'm going to tell my story, because all I ever wanted was a story. So telling a story, you can either go you know, in that situation, go to writing novels, which I'd already tried, you know, had to go with, but I didn't like too much detailed work. You know, I don't like the descriptions. Like how many times can I describe something before it gets boring for me? And
Right.
so, you know, and so when you go to comics, you go, I don't need to describe something. And the other thing you were saying, like, you know, because it's just tell the artist this is the setting and this is what I'm going to do, and what I want to see. But the other side of that is that we're basically bring a novel onto a visual element, like, you know, just like they do it to movies. And I think the respect isn't there enough for the craft, which is why there's disrespect for the craft from the outside, you know. And the other thing I was thinking is like you were talking about that, like backgrounds and stuff. Alan Moore, why do we still friggin', you know, think about that Watchmen? There's so much details and background panels. There's what is like 12 panels per page, yet every panel's got so much work on it, you know, and so much detail, and everything's got something going on. And even like League of Legends, why is that? I mean, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, why is that such a big thing? You know, like there's so much details in between panels and all the story work. And I think this quickness to get everything out on time has made, like, you know, disrespect come to the comic industry because of that. You know, it's like, there's too much talk, and we try to be like novel writers. And I've had that problem myself. You know, it's like I'm trying to put too much story into it, yet not allow enough of the art to carry the story. So how do you, like we were talking about earlier about balancing, how do you balance that out?
I focus more on the character development.
Right.
So I go into, I want to jam pack the character full of the background, full of the story. And then as I write the story, then I break it up. Why? Because that creates a level of mystery. I know what's going to happen next. Now, my job as a writer now has to convey it in a way that I keep the audience wanting to get to know the character, wanting to grow with the character, wanting to find out what the character's mindset is, why it is that they do what they do. Why did he pull the punch? He could have definitely knocked out that villain or killed the villain. However, my whole thing is I want to add a level of family entertainment as well. I want my comics to be safe for a parent to let their child read it without having the concern, or there's too much violence, or there's too much sex, or, you know, the heroines are like half, you know, not even dressed. You know, they already got the skin tight costumes. So what's left to, you know, leave to the imagination. However, we got to have a balance, because we're making, as a cartoonist, we're not making comics for families, or we're not even putting our audience first. You know, so a lot of the times is, what's our politics? What's the new agenda? What's popular? Tell good stories. Have well thought out characters, and I guarantee you, people will come back for it. I mean, you know, you have so many iconic characters. I'll throw one out. You know, DC's Batman. Everybody knows the background. Everybody knows why. Over close to 100 years of storytelling. Why is that? The figure is not only a legend, but it also, you know, there's a mythology there, an iconography. You already know. I say Batman, boom. You know he's the Dark Knight. You know he's got the long cape. You know what he looks like. You know, why is that? That's, again, years, you know, decades of storytelling. Decades of lore being brought. I told you about Spider-Man. You already know that. You know, we have a young teenager who gets bit by a spider, who then is bullied and whatnot, having to deal with the melodramas of life while juggling the dual identity. That's a great plot. You know, so just like you mentioned, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I love that story. Why? Because they made a team of Victorian era literary characters. Some are the main characters, others are supporting characters that are in this world working together to fight, you know, one of the greatest villains, Moriarty, or or whoever else they fought. And it's like, wow. And Alan Moore is still continuing on that lore and adding to those stories. Yeah, and bringing up Alan Moore, such a great writer, but we also have to give Dave Gibbons, what you did, a lot of credit. He was in there drawing those panels and bringing those characters to life. Like, I love Rorschach, but it's like you're pulling from a lot of characters. Even Night Owl, is a little complicated. And then we got Before the Watchmen, which you have the Minutemen and all those stories. It's amazing how we can now spin off. Why? You had a strong core, a really good story, which then when you spin it off, you have an audience that wants to know more about the characters. So that's where I start. I just want to bring it back to that, where I bookend it with me going back to the core of the character. I need to research my own character. I need to develop my character. Then I can throw my character into sticky situations and add the conflicts to make him interesting, or to keep the audience captivated, to where they want to learn more about the character. Right. So yeah.
So talking about characters, tell us a bit about how you develop your characters, because I know with myself, I just start. I have a lot more work that I do for the character before I even start writing the story, or I jump back and forth, creating this universe for them, and like giving them parent, giving them friends, giving them situations, because when I have that, then I can just go, I know what this character is going to do in this situation. So tell us how you develop characters.
Well, again, I want to go back to when I was about 19 years old. So during that time, I was leaving high school. Like I was telling you, that I was just about getting, I was working as a penciler for Leaf Studios, and I was reading a lot of Vertigo titles. So I kind of wanted to step away from the superhero genre. As much as I loved it, I was like, well, I'm starting to mature, or at least I felt that I was. And I wanted to create one last hurrah, a team of superheroes, which I called the Independence Organization. And they were kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, all rolled into one. They were government funded. And this is before Civil War. So it was a government company that had these heroes with their identities known. And I was like, okay, I started having fun with it. And I just didn't stop. So what I did was I created a fictional city known as Arcadium. And then there was, as I was developing the city, I was like, well, let me start championing off like certain areas, breaking apart the city. It was a huge city, and I wanted to break it apart, but at the same time focus on the narration of the setting being built, world building. So think about it. You have the state of New York, where all the Marvel superheroes are, and you have Gotham and Metropolis, where for the DC characters, and then they have their little cities. They never ever meet. They never cross paths. But there's thousands upon characters, and you're like, New York isn't that big. And if you have thousands upon thousands of characters and they're all fighting crime in that particular city or state, you're bound to have them, come across. So with me, when I was creating Arcadium, I was like, you know what? In the panels, I want to have like certain characters just off in the distance, making a cameo. Somebody flying by, even though the main character is on a spread. I just think that would be so fun, because now you're looking for these little Easter eggs on the panels. So I start there, and then I start getting into the deep depths of character development. Like you said, giving them parents, giving them siblings. I will bring you, for instance, I have a character, is the alias, or not his alias is Zigzag, and his identity is Carl Burton. He has a father, a brother who's super intelligent, who joins a security team for anti-hacking, and just he's a cyber cop
Yeah.
who works for the government. His father worked for the government. The illusion of a World Trade Center within the city of Arcadium was attacked by terrorists, and his father ends up dying in that. Carl then decides I want to join the military because I want to fight alongside my fellow citizens and go to war against the anti-terror. When he himself overseas goes over an IED and his Humvee explodes, killing his colleagues, and he's rushed to a hospital where he needs a blood transfusion, and they then give him blood transfusion with the blood of an alien, purposely. Like the doctor, he's a twisted scientist. His name's Augustus Crane. He comes in. He's one of my main antagonists, and he supplies his blood. He tests this military vet, Carl Burton, to see if this guinea pig will either live from it, and what are the reactions. Well, what happens is he lives from the ordeal. He starts healing, but what Augustus Crane doesn't know is that now all of a sudden he gets powers. So that opens up the world. Now we have the conflict of, well, I don't know how to use these powers. How am I going to use these powers? What am I fighting for? Originally, I'm fighting for my father or my father's memory, but now I got to protect my family, and then it goes in deeper.
That's because the thing here is that that family unit is going to create so much depth to what you're going to put of the character. And I've been following this one story online that's been, YouTube, that's been like, pulled apart. And I've noticed that like there's no sort of unit of that's driving the character. The character's just the character. The character does whatever the character wants, because there's no sort of like, well, what sort of family situation did he have? Did he have parents? Did he not have parents? What was it like growing up for him without parents? Or did he have sister? Did he have brother? What was it like amongst siblings? And without that, your story's going to flounder, because your character's going to flounder, right?
You have no motivation.
What is the motivation about why your character's doing what it's doing? And here you've got your character, Carl went to war because, joined up because of dad dying. And then, but he's also got a brother who's actually an anti-hacking group, so he could actually get help from him later if he needed some information. Like, hey, I've got superpowers, but who do we go after? I don't know anybody out there. Who's a bad criminal? Oh, this guy over here. And okay, keep an eye on it, and then let me know when you got something. Stuff like that, because that allows for you to develop the character into new stories every time, rather than just going one and that's it. Oh, okay, the character is now over because I got nothing else to drive him. Well, what if, say, Carl's brother now finds out something else, and now that he brings a new dossier to him, and it's sort of this really cool development, because you have that background for this character, where like if you don't have that meat, like, there is no sort of like bone carrying that story around. And I think that's a pretty cool way of, developing it, introducing, and I think that's kind of a lost art, in the rush to get art out there, and comics out there. People aren't concentrating on developing those characters. So you're talking about how you do like kind of like PG stories, right? That's where Vanadium is, right? Tell us a bit about that, forming Vanadium.
Well, forming Vanadium again, it began with my friend and I. We were drawing for Leaf Studios, and with the rise of Image Comics, we were like, well, wouldn't it be cool to just create our own universe, and I was like, yeah, I got hundreds of characters that we could work from, and then I was just thinking like, wow, like the level of freedom, and just building on that. So yeah, I would be sketching every day, concept after concept, but at that time it was just more the art. I was using Vanadium more as an art studio, but now it's like come full circle. No, I want to make it a comic book publishing company. And and the log line or our tagline is story stronger than steel. Why? Because I want to keep that element of story alive.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just beginning, middle, and end. You know, we got to talk about the in betweens. We got to talk about the character development. Well, what's the motivation, like we were talking about?
Yeah.
How are we gonna get there? And then also building on the villains, like they have stories too. Why are the villains villains? You know,
Yeah.
what drives them? What motivates them? Uh, and another thing is, I don't necessarily want to blur the line between good and evil, because a
Yeah.
lot of the times that's what happens. We have now villains that are good guys now. Like what? Now I
Yeah.
get it. Over time they can change, but how? Because that
Yeah.
wasn't developed. So
Yeah.
what? They did a good deed, and all of a sudden that changes their entire character drive.
Yeah.
No, unless you build on that. Like if you tell that story and you grow with that character to the point where look, there's a change and it is a consistent change, then yeah, I could buy that. But yeah, like that is one thing that I really strive for. My villains are villains.
Mm.
I have the gray area of anti-heroes,
Yeah.
but that's all being developed, and I want to keep my protagonist. Now, that's not going to say that my protagonist can't make mistakes.
Mm.
And then it's the consequences I want them to live with.
Right.
You know, one of the greatest stories I read was a Green Lantern story with John Stewart, where he pretty much killed everybody on a planet, and which is the Mosaic story, and he had to live with the pain of knowing that as a hero, he made such a grievous mistake.
Yeah.
And then you get into the mental health aspect. That's really good story writing.
Mm.
Like you're delving deep into a character who is a hero who has to live with knowing he killed a population on a planet, and then has to question his heroics,
Yeah.
his actions, to the point where he starts doubting himself.
Yeah.
We don't have those levels of depth in character or stories these days. Or at least with a lot of the American comics that I see so far. So
Well, I put it down to the fact that they just out of college, right? They haven't had any real world experiences. See, all these guys who actually created stories back in the day, and all these amazing characters we love, they had real life experiences. They actually, had families. They went to war. They went,
right.
they had issues in their homes. The story behind, kind of like the underground story behind Superman, is that he saw his dad die in front of him.
Mhm.
Because somebody came to rob, and he saw his dad die, and why he wondered why, why wasn't somebody able to help him. That's how Superman came to be. And I think having such terrible situations happen, I mean, not doesn't always have to be terrible, but sometimes experiencing grief, emotions, and life experiences actually helps you develop and write characters that are actually good characters with good good sort of stories to tell. I think that's why we have what we have in the mainstream, because they're not experienced in real life. They're experienced as writers, but not in real life, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So having kind of like come into setting of Vanadium, when did you do that? Like, what year was that?
Well, it began in 1996.
Right.
Yeah. So it's been quite a while. But I started formalizing all the paperwork and doing just going about it, making it a legit business back in early 2021, 2022. So, yeah.
So probably what is like 22 years fully legit. Now, were you working full time on this studio, or on that business, or were you also working while you're doing that?
It was a combination of both. Mainly working at night, or actually working on the comic book stuff during the evening, and just juggling. Yeah, I did have a day job. I still do.
Yeah,
I'm a teacher by day, so yeah. So there's that, and then going to school, still going
yeah,
to school, and then managing my nightlife to writing and drawing comics.
mm,
Um, I also want to get into cartoon syndication, with some daily funnies or even a monthly funny,
yeah.
just to break up the monotony of
Mm.
just either superheroes or just changing it up.
Yeah, I think that's always been, I mean, a lot of people probably just do it like it's a funny paper. There's no sort of like value to it, but there is a lot of value to that,
Oh
to
yeah,
the three panel cartooning, because it breaks up that news cycle and the sports and like whatever it is happening in the paper to entertain people for a little bit. And I remember back in the day, you used to get a whole page of it, right? You had Garfield, you had Judge Dredd, you had
yeah.
Peanuts, you know, and so on. And was it little someone? But then there
Little
was also that fight.
Lulu, Calvin and
You know,
Hobbes,
yeah,
Boondocks. Yeah,
yeah. It was just and it's kind of like, I feel like, I'm not sure of what it's like over in America, but here they don't have that much, cartoons, comic strips anymore, or three panel strips
right.
anymore in newspaper. So, there's no sort of breakup of that, all the serious news, and suddenly there's nothing to calm you down before you go to the sports, right? So
Right.
when you get to the sports, you're angry anyway about what's going on. But I think we need all of it. And, for me, I've tried all that as well, working with some people doing that. That's why I find like three panels are really, really
Yeah.
important. Of, because a lot
And
of
that,
times kids get introduced to comics through that, because, dad's reading, they go, oh, here, read this while I read the paper. Stop bothering me. Read the cartoons, or you're waiting for dad to get you the paper. So
yeah.
I think it's a good call, man, going into that area as well, or trying to get syndicated, because, I don't. I just wish people would like put more value to that art form as well, because
Yeah.
like you look at what was it? Uh, they went into oh, the Critic or something like that. There was a similar one that went into like actual animation, that did TV
Oh
series
yeah,
as
the
well.
critic. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if it wasn't that important, and if it is a good story, if it wasn't that important, they wouldn't put that much money behind it. But you
Right.
look at all the Garfield ones, like I've got books of Garfield's, the cartoon
Yeah.
paperbacks, because I like to have them in my collection, and also Peanuts, because I grew up reading that. So I always kind of, you know, I don't know how to write funny, but I know I've got people who can draw funny, so it's kind of works. So have you done any put out any syndicate, or have you created any sort of characters or stories like for syndication?
Yeah, I did actually. Back in when I was going to high school, I actually worked on the school paper, and I would draw the funnies for the school paper. And I kind of missed that, the three panel work, because it's a great practice to have. One, because you're able to tell a complete story in three panels, and then two, how how you work on your creativity to develop a punchline by the end of the third panel.
Yeah,
So just having that setup, with the intro, then working it through in the middle panel, only to drive it home with that final panel.
yeah,
Or even like Family Circus, they have that one picture, and that one picture sums everything up, and you're just like, wow, this is genius. A couple of cartoons that used to stick out to me was the I think Pearls Before Swine was one. I don't know if you've seen that. Um, and then I'm trying to remember the other one. But yeah, I definitely love the Boondocks.
yeah,
One, because of, you got the punchline, but there was also an underlining message there.
yeah.
So you got the punchline delivered, but then would also make you think. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about sequential art, especially with the syndicated cartoons.
Mm.
And I mean, I growing up in the '90s as a teenager, having to read Calvin and Hobbes was a delight.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just Fursley Force One. Yeah, those guys are great. And again, like it just put a smile on my face just looking at the picture.
Yeah.
The art is fantastic, but then you read it and you're like, wait a minute, it can go either way. It can be really funny or extremely dark. You just don't know.
Yeah.
You just gotta, but everything is layered, and we forget about the funnies. You know, a lot of, like you said, the cartooning. That's where it all began, and back in the day, even Mickey Mouse was a comic strip. So
Yeah. I remember like the first comic itself was a satire piece. Like it's the pair. They did a pair of King. I can't remember which king it was, but the guy satired a king in the shape of a pear, and that's the most earliest comic strip, comic whatever of history we have, which is like the 1800s or something. And like you said, it came out of satire. And that's why I think they always go like comics are the funny papers, because it came out of that, and also the comic strips themselves, because they're there to humor you for a bit while the serious, news is going on, and the black and white newspapers or whatever. But yeah, I found like as much as like this was what I think, like I was talking the other night to I'm Aussie comic reader, and we're talking about like how I like to have oh no, it was yesterday actually with American Retail, and we talk about how I like the idea of MCU, the Marvel universe, cinematic universe, being fun and having their world, planet destroying whatever stuff. But I like my seriousness over at DC, where they deal with real serious stuff, and is on home base on Earth, not out there in the universe. Even though they can be out there in the universe with Jon Stewart and so on, with Oa and all the different, they're thinking of bringing in Lobo, right? And they've got that. But even they've got that, they have really good down to earth stories in DC, which I love, which I don't find in kind of like the MCU, and I like that. I like the difference, and I wish they'd stay the difference. But now I feel like they're going to try to emulate Marvel to be the same as for DC, and I hope they don't, because I like the seriousness of it. To keeping as much as I like the fun and stuff, but I think good storytelling would keep people interested, and I think that's what's failing. And I like the way that that's basically what you want to do, is to tell good stories to younger people, or not to younger people, but actually people any age, right? Because they're able to pick it up, and not worry about what's in it. So when you're writing stories like that, what are what do you kind of like look at trying to like making sure that nothing you're doing is gonna like be a oopsie, later on? Because I remember we were working on a series, fantasy series called Zolandia, and there was a panel, and I wrote it, right? I wrote the script, right? And there was a panel in there because I hadn't decided what age group this was going to go to. And so when they came back to me, like 16 pages of storyboarded panels of pages, and I was lettering it, and I got to like, oh, that's right, we decided this is going to be for teenagers, right? Teen plus. Okay, this panel isn't going to be in there. We're pulling that out. That's it. Out of the entire the whole book, it was one panel just had to go. And so how do you, because I knew that now because the audience for this is going to be teen plus, because I have R18 books as well, because that's for the horror, full on gore and stuff, and that's for that age group. And then I have the teen, then I have mature readers, and then all ages, because I'm just want to write stories, right? So how do you decide that this is how I'm going to tell my story, and what works and what doesn't work for the for you telling it to the audience that you're trying to bring to your comic books?
Well, I'll just take it back to one of my professors when I was taking a comedy course on how to write comedy. They made it very clear, like you have to have a line depicting what is offensive and what is actually funny. Don't blur the line, and don't, because you're going to have the people that are going to get offended, and then not take you as being the comedian that you are because you're too offensive, or you'll get labeled being an offensive comic. So I try to then like just find that balance. And if it's too leaning over, on the side of offense, then I water it down until I can get it to where it's just funny.
Right.
Yeah. So that is one thing that I really, I watch myself.
Right.
Because satire is a beautiful thing. Parody is a beautiful thing. And it also gets to convey our current topics or current events and bring a smile onto somebody's face when done right.
Yeah.
I don't want them scowling after they read a funny and then getting offended and then just throwing, can you believe what this idiot wrote? Like, like, even though that sometimes that's kind of funny to me too, but yeah, we don't want to blur that line. So I'm trying to keep that balance.
So let's talk about the work that you're doing. So I'm going to bring up your Facebook page, and hopefully you can take me through what's there, and people can actually see your art, because like this, I love this character here. Is he got like 4 arms?
Yeah. So that's one of my characters that I created. His name's Savage Hanky, and I just wanted to go back to the 1930s when the characters were fun.
Yeah.
And so I was building or bridging the that marriage between that old 1930s style with the 90s type of edge. This is one of my darker cartoons that I was working on. And it's still in development. Yeah, where he's an actual like demon. And his whole thing is he hates his boss,
Right.
which is the devil, right? So he's like on this realm where when people are just crossing that threshold into limbo, he's got to interview the person, and what he has is he has a retail store, right? And then people are rummaging.
Away, right? He's got a retail store. He's got to interview them, and it's like,
yeah.
The setup
so
itself is funny. Yeah.
Right. So then people are rummaging through the clearance sale, right? And he's like, why are you going through the clearance? We got great product over here. And he's got a New York accent, and he's like, has that whole feel of 50s type of mentality, always telling the person, don't forget who you're working for. But at the same time, no, come over here, and he's trying to get them to go into the store. Well, if you go into the retail store, that's actually the gateway into going to hell. And everybody wants to stop by the clearance aisle because, there's a sale there. So like, yeah, it starts writing itself. And at the same time, he doesn't want to wake. So the first cartoon that I was working on was called Don't Wake the Devil, because he doesn't want to get on his bad side. And at the same time, he doesn't want to hear him. He's like, one day I'll be the boss. So yeah, it's just that whole build up, how he just wants to be, he wants to be more, he wants to climb that ladder, but he's at the beginning stages. So it just gets funny. But yeah, there was that horror element too to it. But yeah, that's what I was building on. With this one, I used it as a cover for an album for a band called the Broken Patron Saints, and they really fell in love with the character too. So I was like, all right, that'll be fun. And what's more outlandish than having 4 arms and having all these weapons, So yeah, and then
it's almost, it's so good, right? I mean, seriously, like,
oh, thank you.
It's like, it's just funny, and it's also serious, but also the setup, like retail, because I've been in retail like about 12 years of my life or something, and understanding that, and then now I'm always at the clearance aisle first, because like,
see, there you go.
because I'm always buying toys and stuff, and so I got to make sure if I'm buying so many, I got to make my my $30 that week work, right? And so on, and so that's why I thought, like, it's just so funny that, like, everybody goes to clearance aisle, but he wants them over to the retail so he can go. That is so good.
Oh, thank you. And eventually, what I want him to do is finally get fired from his job and end up in DMV. So if you ever like, that is, everybody says that DMV is hell. So just having that, having this demon, like complaining and moaning and just that gripe of just him, like, oh, yeah, well, here you are, number 42, come over here, you know what I mean? And just having to deal with that, and then being the customer, not knowing that you're, going through an interview process to get you through those doors,
Yeah.
because you did bad. This is the afterlife. So yeah, I just want to play with that.
Like DMV. I'm like, for us here, we don't have that, right? So,
Okay.
but my first recognition of DMV, like we have different things, but like was the song by Tool, DMV, right? It's like that. It just goes on and on and
Yeah,
on and on
and that's
and
how it is.
on. And I'm like, is this what it's like for those people over there? And this is like 20 years ago. I heard it, right? And I was like, yeah, it's like, it's this. So that was like how, for getting your license and registering your car and all this stuff, and I just couldn't understand it because we don't have numbers over here, right?
Oh my
Like we have
gosh,
5, 6 people, and that's it, waiting, and we know when we're going to go in, and everything's sorted. But
they still don't get it right over here.
yeah, as I just said, the temptation of the clearance aisle, like it's just so funny straight away, and then now you're gonna characters coming in. So tell me about this one. Like, is this his boss or something, or is this something artwork?
Actually, this was another cover that I was working on for the Broken Patron Saints. Yeah, this is again, the name of the band. Well, actually, I just to break the ice on that, I sing for them, and yeah, so it's a punk rock and roll type band, and we had written a song called Hot Rodica Diabolica, and what I wanted to do there was I love the 1963 Thunderbird. So this is a priest with a halo and horns, driving this hot rod up the street, and it was kind of like I just wanted to add to it, blackened out the windows, make it a cartoon, kind of like the I don't know if you're familiar with Rat Fink, the Rat Fink character from So I wanted to make like a hot rod type of cartoon, paying tribute to that. So yeah.
It'd make a great tattoo for people who are into cars, right?
Oh yeah,
awesome there. So let's have a look at some more stuff. Get out there. Actually, probably be better if I went into pages. So this is one of your characters here?
Yeah, that's the Zigzag, the Carl Burton character that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, so and then he has his insignia. I had to pay tribute to Jack Kirby. I love the Kirby crackle. So yeah, so I just wanted to have that. I think it was for Inktober. I was using the Kirby crackle style, just to have his powers. Yeah.
Just developing the character.
Yeah. All my mistakes and and that's the beauty thing of showing the process. You get to show the mistakes and how you fix it.
Now, take us through some of this. Is this part of what your creations as well, or is it just collectible stuff that you've been to events?
No, it was I actually won during an event. I won these prizes from one of the companies.
Right.
So yeah, they were sharing. They're made of cartoon dollars and their stickers, and I was like, yeah, let me promote them as well.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
What was this event like?
Well, they were having a like a podcast, and I was actually being really engaged with the podcast, talking about the comics and then also promoting their company. So yeah. They just I got that in the mail, and I was just really excited to show it off. I wasn't expecting anything. So
that's pretty cool.
It was cool.
Yeah.
I love supporting. As much as I get support, I love supporting others too, because I believe we're all in this fight together. And yeah, so loving art. Yeah, that's one of my characters there. That's Kalina. She has electrical powers, and the there's like kind of a love triangle going on between her, Zigzag, and another character that I have to add more conflict, and to build on another layer of storytelling. So
Right.
yeah.
This one here.
That was a character that I was designing for somebody. I kind of liked how it came out. So yeah.
So you're doing you're all freehand, like or are you doing digital as well?
I'm doing both. I'm teaching myself digital, but I've always been a traditional artist, and even taking away like I was sharing earlier about Rick Veach. He's a great artist, traditional artist, who's going digital now, and
Right.
I use a lot of his advice where you take your drawings, you scan it in, and then you just clean it up digitally.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like this is one picture that I did, all traditional, and then I decided to take a picture of it, scan it into the computer, and then
Yeah.
start cleaning it up digitally. I think that was the freehand, and then these are the digital process of me building on it. That goes back to the evil scientist that I was talking about, Augustus Crane, as
Yeah.
a cartoon character. So yeah.
It's really cool. Like, I mean, this is what I love about digital is like that, for artists, I can just go on there and doodle all over their stuff and go, hey, this is what I was looking for, and then send it back to them. Then I'll get something else. And, I think that mashup is, like my nephew is about 10, 12 now, maybe.
Awesome.
A couple of years ago, I told him, hey, make sure, because he's always on pen and pencil. I said, make sure that you do 50-50, because when you go out, when 5-10 years, whatever it is, when you go out to do this for real, when people come up to you, you're gonna have to be able to draw it on by hand, so you can draw something for people. Even though if you're concentrating on as a digital artist, they want to see you, and that'll carry something away with them, knowing that it's a piece of you that you drew in front of them. But the other thing is, when the kids come and see you do that, they get inspired as well.
Oh yeah,
They
true.
get the real, the pencil work in there. And I've seen that happen. I've seen kids come up to our events that we put on Plunge, and I've seen my friend, Shane, drawing, and kids would come up and start looking, and why are you doing that there and stuff? And it's so much more than here's a piece of paper, right? That I've got for you to take home. And I love this, like how you can see, going back to the blue. A lot of people don't realize that this is how people work nowadays. You take it in, you scan it, and you go, okay, because now you can go on layers and you can correct it, back and forth, and you realize what works, what doesn't work. And you can, without actually rubbing it out and all this stuff on paper, throwing away the paper, redoing it. That's a great thing about, software that works in. So you can, like looking at what else you're adding here is like, it's awesome, man. And I think a lot of times people don't see this on, when we do our interviews, we don't get to see this side of it, with the development of something from, from 2D to 3D, in the sense, like, from computer, from traditional to computer and digital. It's pretty
Thank
cool.
you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So like we were talking about earlier about background and working on the background and really developing what's going on in the background as well. So here we've got a piece. This is one of yours, right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
So
yeah, I drew this, and
there's so much going on.
Yeah. So in this piece, I was actually trying to capture the city of Arcadium, and somebody approached me. They loved it. And this was like the beginning stages of it. They loved that piece that they ended up using it for their album cover, which I was like, yeah, I'm completely honored by it. But yeah, so what I wanted to do was tell a story of a crowd, just walking, and then all of a sudden there was an explosion that happened in the background, which I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, there's there's like a big mushroom cloud, and then the oh, there it is. So yeah, so there's a mushroom cloud, and everything's being destroyed in the background, and it just seems like a bunch of people, or the crowd is just posing for a shot while all this chaos is happening. but yeah, I was just like, that in itself kind of is a talking piece. It kind of tells you a story without necessarily wording a story there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just working on experimenting on the different topics like that, because sometimes we as people are going about our everyday lives, and there's acts of terror right down the street happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even like in the area where I live. I mean, there was a shooting in the area, and I mean, it was across town, but it still happened within my neighborhood. And these are topics that rarely get discussed or seen on actual news. But if you got your ear to the streets, or your area, you definitely will hear it from a neighbor or anybody else. And yeah, it's riveting, just a lot of the stuff that goes on in our day-to-day life.
Right? I mean, like, you're just going about your day, and next thing you know, there's domestic situations popping up in the daytime, and I'm like going, in the daytime, dude?
Right,
seriously?
right.
Like, what is wrong with you? What's causing all this? Get sorted. Because it's like, oh, it's again another week later. Everybody else lives here, right?
Right. What's in the water?
Yeah, it's and, next thing you know, the music goes really loud to drown it out.
Right.
Let me just go back to that one. So with Vanadium, so 22 years, how much work have you got out, and where can people find you?
Well, right now I have the newsletters. So within the newsletters, I'm keeping everybody up to date as to what's happening. I am, like I said, finishing up the. Oh, sorry about that. So right now I'm finishing up the scripts for Merrileaf the Street Avenger. They went through several rewrites, and that's because I really want to make the story tight.
Right.
But I'm not going to make it so tight to the fact that nothing gets produced. So, yeah, it's just that I want to add these layers, because I am telling a really complicated story with this character.
Right.
How we were talking about family, and with Merrileaf, he's got that orphan problem. And I say orphan problem because he was traumatized as a young child, where his parents were killed. I'm not going to say too much there because I don't want to give up that part of the story.
Sure.
But on the flip, so we have Batman, right? His parents were killed at an early age. He is a man of affluence, and despite the tragedy, he was able to use his finances, his affluence, to pretty much create the superhero that he is.
Right.
With Mariluke, on the flip, yes, his parents were killed. He doesn't have the finances.
Right.
He was rescued by a homeless veteran. This homeless veteran is the one who teaches him how to survive in the city where they are.
Right.
And later on, unlike Bruce Wayne, he actually has powers, but he doesn't even know his real identity because of the trauma. So, and that's where I'm taking it. It's like, you can't just have a level of trauma and become a superhero overnight. If your parents were killed right in front of you and you witnessed it, and you're on top of them clutching their jewelry or whatever it is that's a part of them, and you're lying in their own pool of blood, you are going to be in utter shock.
Yeah.
So that's the capacity where I'm taking it. I'm taking it down to the mental health level, because I also want to bring about a mental health awareness within my stories too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome.
that is, yeah. Thank you. So yes, pretty soon, hopefully by the end of this year, we will see some crowdfunding for Mariluke the Street Avenger.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a website or anything else apart from the Facebook, or anywhere else people can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, and you can also find me on Beehive, which is the where the newsletter is.
Right. Can you send me a link in Pro Chat, I can, get people to join up, put in the chat here
Sure.
so people can see.
I can put it on the chat right now. So let me see.
Cool. Yeah.
Let's see. Hopefully it works. I'll get you there. Hopefully you can see it right away.
Now, as
So
we
here's the
finish off
beehive.
here, because George is actually at an event, and so he's taking time from that. So as we finish off here, I'm going to give George, a couple of minutes to come up with what we always do is with our guests is a words of wisdom, and it's like about 3 to 5 minutes where we give him a chance to just what he's learned and impart that that knowledge to the world, and from what he's from his own experiences as a creative. And I think if you just joined us here, it'll be cool if you guys go back and later on watch the entire thing, because we talk about like things that like we haven't discussed on this with other creatives on here before. So it'll be interesting. You might find it interesting. I found it interesting because about the whole fine art parent thing, which was quite a good, we haven't had anybody like that talk about things. So thank you, George. I'm going to put you on solo, and hopefully you've got have had enough time to think about it, and we'll take it from there. So words of wisdom.
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, Aru, for this amazing and honorable experience, this great opportunity to speak with the fan base, with comic book lovers, cartoonists, and artists alike. As fellow artists and cartoonists, I definitely want to say that yes, please, 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 don't let anybody shoot you from your dreams. Don't get shot down. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Get out there, draw as much as you can, write as much as you can. If you gotta write down dialogue every day because you heard it from somebody that you found into, write it. Write it. Don't be afraid to write it. Don't be afraid to draw it, and definitely study from the masters. Get into some fine art. Don't limit yourself to just comic book art or cartooning. You'll learn a lot from Da Vinci, from Van Gogh, from Lautrec, from Picasso, as well as you would, Rob Liefeld, Jack Kirby, Bernie Wrightson, Tim Vigil, Todd McFarlane, and I hope that as creators we can all come together and all honor each other rather than to create this divide. We're all in this together, and we need to partner up and support each other and lift each other up as creators and showcase our work. And again, this opportunity is one of those where we as creators get to talk about the craft and how it is and how important it is to construct and to create, especially to develop stories. And don't forget to add depth to those characters. Take your time. Don't be afraid to take that step and expand on your characters, as well as to breathe life into them. Find their voice and then share it on the page. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much and God bless. Take care.
All right. Thank you, George. All the best, man. And hopefully,
Thank you,
let us know when your Kickstarter's coming up, because we'd love to have you back on to actually promote that, because that's what we do here as well. We like to get people to promote their work. Even though I'm creating myself, that doesn't mean that I don't want to help people promote their work as well, because everybody's got a different audience and everybody's got a different reader base, and people out there are looking for different things. So it's not going to be just my work they were interested in. They're interested in everybody else's work. It's available there, and people have different tastes,
Truly.
and that's why we have so many different genres as well. So thank you, George.
Oh, thank you.
All right, guys, thank you for joining us. And like I said, if you missed out and got on late, jump to the start later on. But wherever you are, be well, be safe. And if you've got a loved one nearby, give them a hug and a kiss. If you if they're not nearby, give them send them a note or something on Instagram or whatever, Facebook. and let them know that you're okay, and say hi to them, just so that everybody knows that you're okay and they're okay, and everybody's talking and not just socializing on social media. And so wherever you are, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Ka kite anō.
Thank you. Take care.